which is her jawbone. So the bullet comes in a downward trajectory. It hits her here and it goes down, and it comes down through her cheekbone, which is this maxilla, and it comes down to her mandible bone, which is her jawbone, and it goes into her neck, and it is lodged in her neck. And so it is devastating to this family, and they don't recover the bullets because the first autopsy would have recovered the bullets. They know there are no exit wounds. But this bullet shattered from a downward trajectory, and thank you, I continue to go through. The bullet tracked slightly right to left and anterior to posterior with a downward trajectory. That explains it comes from the right side and it's going down through her body and it ends up here in her neck. While she's on the ground, you see the video, she's on the ground and he's shooting. And the fact that they say it's distant, when you look at that video, you know he's like this here. He is going away from her. He can just continue to back up while she's on the ground. She's not posing any threat to him while she's on the ground. So he's backing up on the video. He didn't issue any verbal commands. He could have issued a verbal command and said, freeze, don't move. If you move, I'll shoot you. He did none of that. He offered her no consideration. He didn't allow her to comply with any orders. I mean, he is there, and instead of issuing verbal commands, calling for backup, doing any of these things, there are a dozen things he could have done besides shooting 5 shots. But he didn't do anything to de-escalate the situation. In fact, to the very end, he shot, and he shot until she was dead. He escalated it from the beginning to the end. Attorney Lexon, Attorney Williams, and Attorney Merritt, all of us have talked about this over and over again. Why didn't he give a verbal command? That's part of your training.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and we'll get to, in a second, talk about the superficial, non-threatening wounds that he charted, number 4 and number 5. He talks about some of the other things about her cardiovascular system, respiratory, that are not really relevant. What's relevant to this family is the fact that her face was shattered and they had to rebuild her face just to give her a proper homegoing. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. You can go ahead and put that one up. Penetrating distant gunshot wound number 2 of the left lateral chest. The second bullet went into her chest area. Entrance distant, again distant, tight, long range, with no gunpowder residue, no debris, no stippling on her left chest, none whatsoever. The penetrating injury doesn't hit any rib. It goes through the 6th intercostal space in her left chest. And so it enters her left chest, it hits her lung, and it continues to travel through the left dome diaphragm. It penetrates her liver, and it continues going back. The penetrating injury does not strike any of the ribs. It just lands in the right chest, so it's from left to right. And I just point out on that, this bullet, it shows the travel of the bullet. She's still on the ground, it's still going in a downward trajectory. It goes into her chest, it hits her lungs, and it travels down, and the bullet goes through her liver. They believe the bullet lodges there in her liver and it never comes out of her body. They believe, the doctor opines that this is a fatal wound. This right here causes cessation of life. This bullet here, when it goes through her lungs and lands in her liver. He then points out that it doesn't exit. He doesn't find in his autopsy any of the projectile fragments. See comments because he believes the first medical examiner, Harris County medical examiner, would have recovered those. Again, the bullet track is left to right along the horizontal plane with a slight downward projection. Remember, all of these is when she's on the ground. He's standing up over her. All these bullets come when there is a trained, professional law enforcement officer with an unarmed woman on the ground who he knows has mental illness. And he continues to shoot. And then we go to the third bullet. And I know my investigator, Mr. Reed, and I, we kept trying to see which one was more likely to have caused the death first. The doctor opines it could be wound number 2 or wound number 3. Both of them were fatal, and I know Arthur Reed kept looking up definitions for us, but we know that either one of these wounds could have, and we know did kill her. Penetrating distant gunshot wound number 3 of the right abdomen. Entrance wound, again, distant. None of these shots were close range. None of these shots give any kind of evidence that he was in fear of his life, as they continue to try to suggest. In fact, it gives proof of the opposite. You're right, Chelsea, that this was an unjustified murder. Yeah. I mean, he did not have to shoot. We don't know what the personal relationship was going on, but this is not a trained police officer following policy who does this. Distant, long range with no gunpowder residue, no gunpowder debris, no stippling to the right abdomen, penetrating injury, her liver. Penetrating injury, this does hit a vertebrae, the 10th thoracic vertebrae, and this is in her abdomen area. And no exit wounds again, so the bullet is lodged into her body, no projectile or fragments identified, and again, in his comments, he talked about the medical examiner would have recovered the bullets. The bullet track was anterior to posterior and slightly right along the horizontal plane. And again, they don't recover any of the bullets. The last thing I want to look at is, and again, he would not give an opinion because he doesn't know what the medical examiner concluded, but we talked about the superficial wounds 4 and 5. These are wounds that were significant enough for him to highlight in the autopsy. We believe, but we cannot confirm, these may be the taser wounds to her. And so we will get further clarification when the Harris County Medical Examiner finally releases their autopsy. One of the reasons the family wanted to go forward with making this autopsy public because they have gotten no answers at all from the Baytown Police or the medical examiner, and they wanted to know They wanted to let people know how the police killed their mother and their sister. And so that's why they're here today, to let the world know that he shot her while he was moving away from a distance, did not have to shoot her, shot her in the face, shot her in the chest, and shot her in the abdomen while he was moving away. And put that face photo up. Even though it wasn't fatal, it was so devastating that her son Cameron said he could not come here without expressing his outrage. He would not be able to contain himself. And I'm thankful that Chelsea was able to come, because to know that his mother was shot by this police officer when he didn't have to shoot her, and he shot her in the face. Yes. He is beyond angered and outraged. It's going to take a lot of prayer and a lot of counseling for her children to try to get through this. And so this is what we're dealing with. We leave here and we go to the funeral home to see the efforts of the funeral director, if he was able to rebuild her face appropriately to where her family can have an open casket. And you want to know why they're outraged? Imagine if this was your family member on the ground, helpless, vulnerable. If this was your sister, your wife, your mother, dealing with mental illnesses, and the police shot and shot and shot and shot and shot when he did not have to. There is nobody who can convince this family or any of us in this community who have saw the police do things to people of color that are unnecessary and unjustifiable. Nobody, Bishop Dixon, can explain why this officer shot her these many times while she laid on the ground, and he knew that she didn't have a weapon. He knew she was not just trying to go home. And so with that, we'll try to take a few of your questions as we prepare for the funeral tomorrow at 11 a.m. At Lily Grove Baptist Church. Reverend Terry Anderson will be officiating. Bishop Dixon will be participating, and Reverend Al Sharpton from National Action Network will deliver the eulogy for Pamela Turner. I know some of the congressional members and former congressional members from Texas are planning to be in attendance. I'll take a few of your questions.
Any indication as to when the medical examiner will make available the autopsy report to you?
You know, it's been my experience that for whatever reason, they always hold these things far longer than they need to be, especially when it's involving the death of an unarmed person of color. It seems like they work with the police department hand to hand, and they continue to say stuff like it's an ongoing investigation, we can't release it. Maybe you all can get further than we could get.
Did your autopsy show that she was hit 3 times out of the 5 bullets fired?
Yes.
And tased twice in her leg?
Well, he hasn't confirmed that, but that's what we believe. When the medical examiner will have better, superior knowledge, because whether the tase prongs or what have you, he would have seen that before they delivered the body to the private pathologist hired by the family. Because remember, they also took out all the bullet fragments as well.
Have you been able to ascertain how long Officer Dela Cruz has been patrolling that complex, and if he had any prior interaction with Pamela?
That is a very relevant question. We haven't gotten any information from the Baytown Police Department. We understand that he lived in that apartment complex, that he did, in fact, know exactly who Pamela Turner was. She was very well known in that community.
explained to him that if you want to show officers that you don't have a weapon, go to the officer. In this police report, I've read some of it, at least it was written to me. One of the officers stated that he watched my son get undressed. Said he thought he saw a knife. But he never saw my son leave the premises because he was on the patio behind the gate. So I'm saying if he saw him undressed, but he never saw him leave, and the next thing he said he heard was gunfire. I mean, my son was shot twice. So if you have time, maybe
Certainly want to talk to you, and thank you for sharing that with us. We'll see if this De La Cruz has any relation to that De La Cruz. Yeah.
This isn't the main question, but it is germane. Did your findings show that Pamela Turner was taking schizophrenia medication at the time of the shooting?
Again, our medical examiner did not offer an opinion on that. But again, I want to echo what her family said. The question is what medication he was taking. What did Pamela Turner do wrong in that video other than try to get home and try to defend herself? So why is it when an unarmed person of color gets killed, everybody says, oh, let's find out about them? Why aren't we finding out about the killer? She didn't kill anybody. She was on the ground being murdered.
Did the autopsy report say anything about mental illness at all?
No.
Was it all physical?
No, but we know she was getting government assistance for her mental disability.
If I could ask a question, have you done any calculations? You were talking about the distance, so any estimate?
No, not at all. At this point, we don't have a lot of the official stuff that comes in a police report because they have control of everything. The family is at the whims, the complete control and discretion of whatever officially is going to be released. We can try to do investigation by hiring a private autopsy. We hired an expert with the video to break down the video, all that stuff, but those are the only things we can control until they release information to the public, because the public has a right to know when governmental entities who have law enforcement give the power to use lethal force, then they have to tell the public. The only thing we don't know, as we've come to see in America, is how long it will take. How long before they release this video? Normally, we think there's a playbook that they try to let it stretch on forever until people forget about it.
But you're basing that on the lack of stippling, I guess. That was
Oh, yeah, so let me make sure. I've been in enough of these. You know what distance is. And we got video too. So there's nothing, nobody can tell this family that he had to shoot. I mean, she's on the ground when she's being shot. He's standing up. So whether he's 5 feet, whether he's whatever feet, he can continue to make distance.
So he retreated after there was like a tussle between the two of them. He retreated and then.
You see it on the video. Don't take my word for it. He's retreating. She's still on the ground.
If the shots are fired at a distance, that tells you what? That he wasn't in immediate danger?
Absolutely. That he was not in immediate danger, that she did not pose an imminent threat to him. You're right, Ray Charles could see that he didn't have to shoot her.
Ben, do you know if it's policy with the Baytown Police to administer a drug test on officers when they're involved in shooting?
We don't know if there's a policy whether the police officers are to get drug tested after they use deadly force. We often fight for that, but I don't know any police department in America that has that policy. Not yet. We plan on exploring every legal remedy possible to give this family full justice. You saw the way she was murdered? I mean, you want full justice. He needs to be held accountable. The department needs to be held accountable, just as if it was a private person who did this to Pam. They would be arrested now. They wouldn't be on administrative leave. A few more questions, and then we can. He doesn't want to come forward until the medical examiner comes forward because he doesn't want to get into a back and forth.
Last week you mentioned that there was a
And we're going to make this press conference shorter. You said the last one was too long.
yeah, I didn't say that.
Yes, you did, but go ahead. Yep. The family noted that for me.
I said a very lengthy press conference.
Right.
Anyway, last week you mentioned that there was an interaction with Officer De La Cruz. He was in plain clothes, came to, I think Chelsea mentioned that, came to the door, maybe gestured toward his gun was the allegation. Were there any complaints filed against him or any officers of the Baytown Police Department prior to last week?
Not that we're aware of. However, we know Pam, it is reported that she called. Whether that was documented, we don't know. She called and they called because she was getting arrested a lot in that apartment complex for very small things.
And if I could ask perhaps the last question.
Okay.
And I realized that Ms. Turner, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia and everything. And I'm not asking about what kind of medication she was on or may not have been on. But did she ever have, like, times, a lot of people, sometimes they don't take their medication?
Again, we'll get into all of that there, but we just are baffled why all the attention is on Miss Turner, who wasn't aggressive. She's dead. The shooter, was he on medication? Look at the video. She wasn't aggressive. She did have mental illnesses that she struggled to. The family talked to that at the last press conference at great length. In 2005, she was diagnosed. She worked for 5 more years. She struggled. Chelsea was 8 years old. Cameron was 12 years old. She was taking care of her children. She then was told that she couldn't work anymore. That's when she started getting government assistance for the disability. And so they've told you what they know at this point. But it's kind of, it seems to the family, and we keep talking about this, and I try to tell them, yeah, I know your mother is the victim and she's dead based on everything we see, but you have to prepare that the world is not fair, and they're going to try to look for every reason to justify why this guy shot your mother while she was on the ground. That's just the reality of being a minority in America when the police kill you. Thank you.
Thank
Can the lady say and spell their names, please?
Sure.
you. Tracy, T-R-A. Tracy Frazier, Tracyfrazier. Yes, I'm her second oldest sister.
Antoinette Dorsey James, Antoinette Dorsey-James.
Chelsea Rubin, CHELSIE RUBIN.
Okay, you want to tell them, and Jerome is also here, a family member.
Jerome, JEROME, Shelby, SHELBY.
Thank you all. We'll see you at the funeral services tomorrow at 11 a.m. sharp. Thank you.